You are here. This is Camp Hale. And this is where I almost fucking died. Truck's right there, highway's right there, and I'm only going over there. Camp Hale is the former home of 10th Mountain Division. And as cool as that is, this is where they used to train their mules, which is even cooler. 10th Mountain called this home since like World War I. I don't remember when they decommissioned it. Back when this event occurred, I didn't walk very far. I think I was roughly normally a 20 to 25 minute walk from where I would start to where I was going. And the night in question, it took me 2.5 hours to get to the same spot, mainly because all of this was covered in a snowstorm that rolled in the previous 2 nights. So this is a section that I had worked in, trained in a bunch, and I loved the terrain. I loved the trees. Aspens are fucking awesome. And because of the heavy pine and aspen, this is one of those areas where I just could not lose my breath. Even though we were at 99,000 or 9,900 feet of L, I was always well oxygenated here. And this was just a playground for me back then. This was a little camp spot that I found. I knew it was here. I knew I could get to it. And I knew there was a lot of resources around that I could utilize to build my camp. The problem was the snow. My plan was to use detritus and dry wood that had previously fallen for my fire, for my shelter. Unfortunately, with 3 or 4 feet of good snow on it, none of that was available. You could see where that would start to suck. Well, it did. It sucked a lot. So, this was where home was going to be. Now, my initial plan was to hang out here from Friday to Sunday. This is high altitude, so low in the mountains, so all the things are stacked against me. The other aspect that was in my favor was I was very, very familiar with the area. I wasn't extremely far from the highway. The downside was I really wasn't expecting that storm to come in. This was so low for me, so people knew where I was, but they weren't expecting me home until Sunday. Kind of cool. My initial plan was to leave my house at like 8:39 a.m., drive up here, which at the time was about 30 to 45 minutes of driving, not very long at all, and hike in, build my shelter, build my fire, collect detritus from the ground for firewood. There's plenty of hanging and standing dead here. So I knew I was going to have a lot of resources. What I hadn't planned on was that evening storm to come in and cover everything. So just that flat, even that flat area from where I have the truck parked to the tree line was a normally very, very easy trek to make. The entire trek from there to here is roughly a mile, and I can generally do it in about 20 minutes of light walking. I didn't film it because I'm stupid, but there was a small creek about halfway through that open space. Usually that little creek was 3 or 4 feet wide. It was an easy hop to get across it. In the winter, it was substantially more water full. But I'll get to that in a minute. So earlier, I pointed out a big pine tree, and that pine tree is substantial, as you would expect a pine tree to be. But when I initially started the hike across the flat area, that big ass tree was only sticking out of the ground by like 2 or 3 feet. That should have been my first clue. So my initial plan was to get here early in the morning with plenty of daylight to start to do my survival chores and do my building stuff. And life being life, I didn't get out here till like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Normally that wouldn't be a big thing, except this section of the mountain is kind of a bowl. So there's high points on either side, and Camp Hale is kind of set in a valley, and a valley floor at that. Well, the mountains are east and west, and a 5 or a 6 o'clock sunset is actually a 3 o'clock in the afternoon sunset. And once it goes behind that mountainside, the temps here begin to drop quickly. We had the storm the night before. We had a late start to the day. And when I got out of the truck, I'm walking across feet and feet of snow. The wind was fairly substantial. There was a little sleet in the air. The wind was blowing the previous morning's snow, which was powdery, across that little like open area, which I wasn't actually expecting to be there either. Needless to say, I started the hike very wet. Now, I was dressed appropriately. I had long johns on. I had good pants on. I wasn't wearing my snow pants because I was like, oh, I'm going to save those for if I get wet. Not really planning to get wet. Downside of that is the best plans of mice and men go to shit in a fucking hurry. And mine went to shit in a hurry. So that little creek I talked about is normally about 6 feet down, maybe 2 to 3 feet across, and another 6 feet up, and you're back on the flat. Well, when it's got 6 to 8 feet of snow on top of it, math to math to math, it's a lot further down, and I didn't see it. Because of the whiteout, and because I couldn't see it, I didn't descend so much as fall down into the fucking hole. When I landed, I wasn't in a comfortable spot. I was in the water. I did land feet first. I kind of tumbled, and my feet stopped me from going ass over tea kettle into the water, but I was already wet up to my thighs. The back of my ass was a little wet. And I was already wet. I was pretty much committed. Fuck it, let's go. I crossed a little creek, which again is, you look at it, it's a bubbly river, not a humbling river. And out I came, and now I was back up on top of the snow, in the wind, in the sleet, and now I'm covered in snow. I'm covered in water, not snow. But now the sleet is beginning to stick to me. That becomes very, very, very problematic. I finished the hike. I get to here. Right here was a nice space for a reflective fire. All this was covered up. Again, there was about, inside of the trees, there was roughly, 3 or 4 feet of snow. So it was substantial, but not insurmountable. It was mostly powder, so I was able to dog paddle my way through it to get down to some dirt. I was able to hang a reflective tarp, not one of those cheap Mylar blankets, but an actual tarp that had a reflective side and a bright colored side. And I hung it from a couple of the trees here, and then I started a fire. Unfortunately, there wasn't anywhere, like by now it's 6 o'clock. Like it took me a long time to get here. It took me a very long time to set camp. It took me a very long time to get ready to the point where I could actually start a fire, and I was wet the entire time. The sun had been down for at least 2 hours, and I was behind the 8 ball all the way. Even now, it's 68, I think it was 68 degrees when I left the truck, and it is starting to rain. Earlier, there were snowflakes in the air, so that can become problematic. We'll see what this turns into. Maybe I'm going to climb into that little cave here in a minute. We'll see. Maybe I should start planning ahead, because, again, this is the mountains, and the weather changes in a hurry. On the plus side, the forecast for today is even if it starts raining, it shouldn't last very long. I'll probably stop the camera if it does start to rain. That way I don't wreck my phone and my other phone, and I don't get drenched. So we'll see how this goes, but we'll give it what we can while we can. So I start digging around for dry wood, and the only dry wood is standing dead and hanging dead. I'm cold, I'm exhausted, walking across depths of significant depths of snow without snowshoes because I was hubrisly unprepared. It's hard. It's very, very tough. Anybody that's broke trail before knows how much it really does in fact suck. So I'm here, I'm exhausted, I'm tired. I'm already not thinking well. And I start making bad choices on top of bad choices. I get the fire started. I get a little food in me. The food that I put in me pulls my blood flow to the center of my core and not my extremities. So now I'm starting to debilitate even worse because I'm in danger of hypothermia and all sorts of stupidity, all of which I am extremely skilled at recognizing, avoiding, and surviving. The downside is now I'm not making good choices. That becomes a fucking problem. Ethically sourced, I'm sure. So now that I got a little chair, a little bit of cover, the rain won't bother me so much. I am, however, going to move you a little closer. So all of that is pretty much just to tell you how I got here. And let me tell you, it sucked. Should have made a little table. So anyway, all of that is a long-winded way to tell you how I got here. The real magic happens at about 2 o'clock in the morning, when I decide I can't be here anymore. The whole night I had been wet. The whole night I had been soggy. I had been tired. I had been out of breath. And I had just been randomly beaten up by my own decisions throughout the course of this. All of which I knew better. No, I knew a lot better. At the time, I was an avid outdoorsman. I trained people how to survive in shitty environments, just like the one I was in. The difference was, I had never been in an environment as bad as I was in. I've camped on mountains. I've camped on flats and in deserts. And I've camped in mountain storms. But I have never done it above 6,000 feet. Here I was at 9,000 feet in a real storm, in the real mountains. Thankfully, I was a mile from my car. That is probably what saved me. So, my shelter was adequate, but I wasn't able to physically get enough firewood for the evening, which meant at some point before morning, before daybreak, I was going to run the fuck out. That was going to be problematic. Mainly because It was already cold, I was already wet, and I had already made a plethora of stupid fucking decisions. So, hopefully, I mean, obviously I make it. Spoiler alert. But about 2 o'clock in the morning, I woke up from a rough, maybe hour of sleep. When you're in the cold, you tend to sleep until one side of you gets cold, and then you roll the fuck over, and you hope that side gets warm before the other side gets cold, and then you have to roll over again. I had made a pine bed, so I had pine boughs underneath me. I had a good amount of insulation between me and the packed snow below me, but not enough to really make it through the night. The reflective tarp was doing its job, but I didn't have enough firewood for it to do its job for long enough for me to make it to morning. So at about 2 o'clock in the morning, I decided it's time. I need to get out of here. If I don't, I will be dead by dawn, dead by dawn. So I collected my shit. And when I say I collected my shit, I essentially opened the top of my backpack and just started shoving shit in there. All the organization I had, all the nice, neat pockets that I had, didn't matter. I was just shoving that stuff in there like grandma stuffing the turkey on Thanksgiving. I just wanted that shit in there. I didn't care if it was wet. I didn't care if it was dry. I didn't care if it was on fucking fire. I just shoved it in there. Now, I'm already cold. I'm in early stages of hypothermia. And I should have like bowed up some of that ash and coals to keep me warm, but I didn't do that either. I just put my backpack on and started down the hill. When I got out in the flat, there was no, thankfully it had become a clear night. I could see the stars, I could see the moon. Everything was coated white, so I had plenty of light. I could see very easy, no matter, regardless of the fact that it was so late in the evening. Sniper sticks. So I was making reasonable time. I was dry at that point, but still very, very cold. I had all my wet layers back on, even though they were now mostly dry. I was able to pull my snow pants over that. So now the movement I was making was going to generate some heat, generate some steam, get my undercarriage really warm. And I started to started to choke. I started to cross the open space. I'm not thinking right. I'm pushing as hard as I can. There's feet of snow and I'm falling all the way through it. Like, I'm not falling up to my thigh or my knee. I'm falling up to my tits. I have to crawl myself out. I'm burning lots of calories that I have not taken in. I have not replaced. I've drank very little fluids throughout the evening, so I'm dehydrated. That's not helping any. I dig myself out of the holes. I keep moving. I fall through at one point, and I thought I went snowblind. Because I didn't fall to my chest. I fell through, like, probably 6 inches above my head. My backpack, which I wasn't wearing the lap belt at that time, which would have saved me some trouble. My backpack hit the surface of the snow as I went below it, and it jacked the backpack up over my head and on top of me. So now I'm in like this weird position under the snow with a bag on top of my head, and I'm like 6 feet under the snow. Obviously my head's only like 6 inches below the snow, but like the rest of me is touching earth. I didn't realize that that's what had happened. I just knew that all of a sudden it was very, very dark and very, very white, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but I'm in the snow at night. It's dark. It's white. do the math, it's cool. I figure out where I am. I figure out what just happened. I realize that I'm in a jacked up position. I realize my backpack is on my head. But I also realize I'm out of the wind. And that's pretty cool. And that's pretty comforting. Because now that I'm out of the wind, I start to feel warmer. And as I feel warmer, I'm starting to believe I'm better. And I start to believe that I can rest here for a minute. And I'm starting to believe I can close my eyes for just a minute. And I did. And I fell asleep for probably a minute. I don't know how long it was. I'm going to hope it wasn't very long, because when I woke up, I was cold, very cold. But I realized I'm under the snow. I am out of the wind, but I'm not out of the woods, so to speak. So I needed to get my ass up and start pushing again. So I dug my way out of there, which took an untold amount of time. Now, keep in mind, it took me about 2.5 to 3 hours to get to my camp. I have no idea how long it's taking me at this point to get back to my truck. I had a Suburban that I had bought from a church through one of the guys that I had known through the security company I worked for. And I knew that if I could just get back to that truck, I was going to be okay. So, long story short, I get out of the fucking hole. I start digging my way out. I'm on the surface. I get myself to my feet. I rearrange my pack, and I start moving. And then the worst possible thing ever could fucking happen. Because now I'm super exhausted. I've been going for I don't know how long. And I also, again, for the second time, without the benefit of a whiteout for an excuse, I didn't see the entry to that creek. And I fell down into the creek again. Only this time I didn't land feet first. I landed face first. Face down with my backpack on my fucking head again. And I get up and I cross it, which again, this is normally like 2 to 3 feet. It's about 6 to 8 feet across now, where it's normally like 3 to 4 inches at its deepest. I'm up to my knees and thighs. So I dig my happy ass out. I climb up the other side, and now I'm back in the wind. I'm back in the cold, and I'm back in the I'm wetter than I should be situation. On the plus side, that little creek represents roughly half the distance once I come out of the tree line to my vehicle. That is the halfway point. It's not the halfway point of the entire trip, but it's the halfway point from that point forward. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm gonna make it. I'm cool, I'm good, I've got plenty of room now, I'm gonna be all right. So I start going. And about halfway there, so I'm like a quarter of the way from my vehicle, like I'm almost there, I fell. And it wasn't like I fell through the ice this time. I just tripped. My legs wouldn't hold me up anymore, and I fell forward. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm out of the wind again. I'm not in a hole. I'm not anywhere else. I'm just low. And the breeze isn't bothering me, and the wind's not in my face, and I can just rest for a minute. And I'm just going to lay down. I'm just going to put my head down for a minute, and I'm going to be okay. And I laid down, I put my head down, I closed my eyes, and I went to sleep again. I just got bubbly over it because, like, for those of you that have been in the mountains, you know that's not okay. And I remember something waking me up, probably the fucking cold, but I also remember what made me get off the ground was me realizing I wasn't cold anymore, and that the snow on my face wasn't bothering me. And I remember thinking to myself, That's not okay. And a buddy of mine, Tom Moore, Tomahawk Tom, I remember him just telling me, like, it's never okay to sleep when you're cold. It's never okay to let yourself get that bad. The worst thing you can do is just stay there. If you're not moving, you're not improving your situation. And the only way I could improve my situation at this point was to get my ass to my truck. So I get up and I start moving. And obviously, I'm here. It's a couple years later. It's like 15 years later. I make it to my truck. And when I pulled in, there was a little plowed space. So there's, the little mounds of snow. And I reach into I take my gloves off, which are sopping wet, which isn't good for my hands either. And I reach in my pockets and I pull out my keys. And I can't hold them because my hands aren't doing hands things. And I pin the key between my palms and I stick it in there and I unlock the truck. I pull the key out, and I put it in my mouth, and I open the door, and I reach to unlock the back doors, and I lock the door again without realizing it, close it. And I go to the back driver's door, and I grab the handle, and I go to open it, and I jerk myself off my fucking feet. I hit the mound of snow behind me, and now I slide underneath the truck. So now I'm underneath the vehicle in a puddle of slush and ice, and my backpack's over my fucking head again, but I'm out of the elements. I'm under my vehicle. I'm in a shelter. I'm gonna be okay, right? No, stupid. That's not the right thing. I pull myself out. I find my keys because they were in my mouth and I dropped them under the truck, so I have to climb under the truck again. Get my keys, I open the door again, I make sure I hit the unlock button. I climb back into the back seat of the truck. I reach over the driver's seat and I start the truck and I turn the heat on murder and I fall backwards into the seat and I try to lay down and I didn't go well because when I woke up later on, I was face down on the floor of the truck between the back seat and the front seat, out like a light. And I remember waking up, looking, and realizing that I was on the floor. My backpack was on my head again, but it was warm. And I remember thinking I can feel stuff again. And then I realized I didn't want to feel anything right there because everything hurt. Everything was bone-chillingly cold. And all of the poor decisions I had been making over the last 20 hours were all coming to roost. I remember when I got in the truck and turned it on, I remember seeing the clock on the radio, and it was 6:25 in the morning. I had left camp for a 1-mile trek at about 2 to 2:30 in the morning. Here it is almost 6:30 in the morning, and I was finally in my truck. When I woke up, it was 10:30, around there somewhere. The truck had been running the whole time, so it was very, very warm in that truck. I was sopping wet still, but warm. And I remember taking my clothes off. All the windows in the vehicle were steamy. I remember getting undressed, crawling into the third row seat of the vehicle, pulling out my emergency clothes, and getting dressed. And I remember thinking to myself, I did everything wrong. I remember thinking to myself, I had a plan. I did not stick to the plan. I realized that by getting there late, I made all of the wrong decisions from that point forward. But that one, getting there late, ignoring the weather, just that little shift in schedule was the catalyst that caused everything else to go downhill. So that's the vast majority of my story. Obviously, I made it out. Obviously, I lived. I'm not missing any digits. But that could have gone bad. And I mean, it really almost did. No matter how much skill I had acquired at that point in my life, poor planning damn near undid all of it. I knew better. I had the equipment. I had the knowledge. I just didn't make use of fucking any of it. And that is a bad fucking idea. In the time betwixt that day and this day, I have done a bunch more high altitude solo camping. At the time, I had done plenty of solo camping. I had done like marathon treks. I had done plenty of camping in austere environments. But what I didn't do was anything at altitude that combined everything else. It taught me a lot. It taught me what my limits were at that time, which I'm hoping I've surpassed those by now. It taught me where my deficiencies were and where my mental retardation was, which there was fucking plenty. How many things can go wrong before you're fucked? The lesson here is sometimes it's just one mistake that snowballs into more and more mistakes. That's what I did. Hopefully this helps you guys. Hopefully this entertains some of you folks. I'm in Camp Hale again, and I love this place. I've been here several times since then in actually worse conditions, but thankfully I was better prepared. Life gives you the test before the lesson. You're expected to pass. Failure is not final, but it can be a fucking lesson if you let it. You guys have fun. I got other shit to do. I am heading back to help a good set of people become gunfighters. Maybe I should do some more of that content. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe or whatever. Deuces.